to say that I echo completely what was said in the previous panel, and I am not going to look at the world at glass half full. What we're going to look at is what does the fourth industrial revolution really mean? What are the headwinds and tailwinds? I won't spend too much time on headwinds because they just talked about some of them. And I am going to take a European view from this because I truly believe that Europe, in terms of finding its leadership role in the world, this is one of the areas through the fourth industrial revolution can really find a leadership role in the globe, and quickly, because I think there's a lot of things going on. We will then talk about, I will highlight at least 4 ideas that I think are pertinent when you think about the fourth industrial revolution. We will look at it from both an opportunity set, and then I'll also talk about it from a GP perspective. And again, that was talked about, I think, in the previous panel about data, and how data and the collection of data and the uses of data from the investment side is going to be is already there, but really needs to be fast-tracked. And then I will conclude. But what is the fourth industrial revolution? It is the lines between digital, biological, and physical that are fusing in a way that we could never have predicted. While the technologies and innovation they foster are allowing this transformation, we are obviously witnessing deep political polarization around climate change and related subjects. I will briefly touch on through the lens of headwinds and tailwinds we currently face. The fourth, I'm going to call it 4IR. I'm not going to keep going through fourth industrial revolution. The 4IR is not just about smart machines and faster algorithmics. It's about how we invest to solve the greatest challenge of our time. And that challenge is the climate crisis, and we'll touch on that. To meet our climate goals and not just slow down emissions, but to reverse them, we need a multi-pronged defense through more renewable and clean energy, carbon removal on a grander scale, as well as many more nature-based solutions. They need to work in tandem and on a scale that we have not yet seen. Now, where are we on this? And I'm briefly going to touch on the tailwinds. Again, most of you will know this, so I won't spend too much time, but it is worth just noting that nature is telling us something. 2024 was the hottest year on record. We had the highest emissions ever in carbon dioxide, of which nearly 80% was fossil fuels. We had 151 natural disasters through flood, through drought and fire. We had the biggest displacement of people in the last 20 years in 2024. I think that's telling us something. We have the geopolitics, which is creating a polarized world around the subject matter. Right? Europe needs to be and is leading the technology with regards to sustainability and impact. And clearly there is a polarizing process going on between the US and Europe. I haven't mentioned China because I think China is on a good course, but in a different way. I think it was someone in COP30 organizers who actually crystallized, I think, just in a couple of sentences, what's going on the geopolitical side when they said that trade wars would limit the transfer of technologies from where there is innovation to where there is the greatest need. And I think when we think about this polarization that's going on, in essence, that is one of the issues, right? Trade wars happen, come and go. Wars come and go. The climate is here forever, right? So We've been here before. In the last 5 years, actual impact investing across the globe has increased by 14% CAGR per annum, right, to $1.6 trillion. Right? The EU is going to spend somewhere between 1.2 trillion euros per annum, that's new money and old, into impact and sustainability-related causes and regulations. Tailwinds. I genuinely believe, and I know this was said earlier, that there is a groundswell in Europe around the need of energy independence, which in itself is going towards clean energy, the climate crisis, carbon emissions, and so on. And therefore, I do believe that Europe can be a leader in the fourth industrial revolution, as it was a leader, perhaps, in the second industrial revolution. Innovation in Europe is not about Silicon Valley-like disruption, but about scalable, secure, and socially responsible innovation. Europe is writing the blueprint in renewable energy for clean and smart and sustainable energy of the future. And there are a lot of laws that we can go into, and you can see here, and a lot of public-private processes going on. That is channeling the money to where it needs to go. These are initiatives that have been speeded up in the last 3 years, but we're already there. And I think, as this polarization goes on between us and the US on the geopolitical side, I think you'll find that these will become much faster will be implemented in a faster way. So the question I was asked was, well, what is it that you should invest in, or what is it that the fourth industrial revolution can really bring to the table? And I think one of the things is really interesting. What I'm going to point out is nothing new, i.e., there is a plethora of initiatives, of investments going on across the globe that are impactful on nature, on the ocean, on biodiversity. But the issue is, and we all know this, is scale. It's not that they're not doing it, it's just how do you get enough money, how do you get it to scale? So what I'm going to talk about are the 4 things that I really thought about that we are either already doing and put more scale to it, or whether I just can't believe that we're not putting more scale to it because actually it's doable. So I think one of them is around renewable energy. And I think one of the things about renewable energy, and what is it at the fourth industrial revolution, what is it at its core? At its core, it's a confluence of AI, digitalization, and tokenization. Those are the core fundamentals, but each one exists on its own. It's the fusion of the 3 that will create that exponential growth. And so when you think of that and you put that into renewable energy, what does that mean? I'm already investing in wind farms. I'm already investing in solar panels. I'm already investing in green hydrogen. But the reality is that, and actually I give you a little anecdote because I was talking to someone the other day about this. They own solar panels across France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and Greece. And one of the things they've done is they've digitized. What does digitization mean? Well, it means that they can monitor the efficiency of every panel they own from an office in Italy. What does that mean? Well, it means that when that panel, or when the various panels are not working, they have one place to order from for all those panels, which they then send through to. It also means that they can be much more focused on maintenance tasks because they know what needs maintaining. Through the efficiency that they're gaining in the making that every panel is working, they're creating more electricity. Guess what? They're generating about 2%, 2.5% better IRR than I've seen in most other solar panel places. And that's just digitalization. That's not even over, you don't even have AI that's on top of that, which is doing weather predictions, which is thinking about, which is looking at demand and analyzing demand and wondering when to, well, they can't tell you when to produce energy because the sun is going to do that for you, but when is there going to be a surge in demand? And if you then take it one stage further, which I think we're not there yet, but if you did, and think about tokenization, what is tokenization going to do to the renewable industry? It's going to democratize it, which means you can decide when you want to sell back your electricity. You're not just going to be forced to just send it in when it's being produced, right? It means you can have peer-to-peer selling of electricity. Because one of the things is, through all those three, you will start to have lots of different areas producing electricity. Today, we have a solar farm, we have a wind farm, and we'll have fossil fuels producing it. Where that comes from in the next 10, 15 years will be all over the place. Data centers are going to start, large data center holders will start to have their own green production, right? Because they simply can't be slave to the grid. So my point is this, renewable energy, it's with us. It's what does a 4IR give us that we don't have today and how we can sweat the assets more, right, number one. Two, we can make them, with new materials, we can make them quicker, which is what we need to do, because one of the impediments of green energy today is not the willingness to create more. In actual fact, if you want to go and have a wind turbine today, you're not going to get it till 2030. All right? That's the earliest delivery time, no matter which turbine manufacturer you go to. That's 7 years away. Sorry, 5 years away. I'm in the wrong year. So my point is, it's about how you. So, one of the things I'd urge you to do if we want to encourage this, is the next time you talk to a wind farm operator or a solar farm operator, ask them what else they're doing. Because if they're not doing it, why not? Right? Why aren't they getting more out of the asset? The technology is already there. It's just a question of how you combine it. Tokenization is not quite there. Sorry, I'm just talking about that. And then I thought there's a couple of other things that I thought were quite interesting. Hydrogen fuel cells, put it on the radar screen, right? I know we've been talking about it for a while, but the tests are going really, really well, and that is how we're going to be driving our lorries and our trains and our ships. So it's something to really keep an eye on if you're looking for, what's out there that makes sense. And the other one is green, is what they call a hybrid system, which is green hydrogen and battery power together, because that is sort of grid level storage, which together with an AI overlay really does start to create efficient ways of storing electricity. So all of these things, I think, is going to be. I don't like the word disruption because I think it's not the same American term that I mean it in. But I think there's going to be, definitely in renewable energy, it's going to be an asset class that grows even more than it is today. And I think there are going to be lots of different business models that come out of that with the adoption of 4IR. My favorite recommendation is the direct air capture. Now, if you haven't heard about it, all right, what it really is a giant big fan, sucks air, has a filter, collects carbon. That's in its most simplistic term, okay? And it works off electricity. It needs electricity to do that. So now you start thinking about the renewable energy. We talk about emissions, but actually what we also need to do is carbon capture. We need to collect and reduce carbon emissions. Not just reduce emissions at the outset, but actually collect it, because we're still emitting too much carbon. You could put one of these in every wind farm and every solar farm. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but take my point with it. Right? When the electricity is low, at a low price, or it doesn't need to be used because the grid doesn't want it, here's your opportunity to divert it to something else. So we talk about this, about combining renewables, right? How do I use my excess electricity, which can't be stored yet in the right way, for good to the planet, for good for the climate? One of them is I can go and create hydrogen. The other one is that I can actually go and scrape carbon out of the atmosphere. If this was put on scale, there are only 30 of these in operation today in the world. One of them is in Iceland. If you actually put this to scale, virtually 25% of all carbon emitted would be collected through this between now and 2050, and that is it would collect 25% of what we're trying to reduce between now and 2050. To me, this is an amazing technology. It exists. But how is it that you take that, how do you incorporate that into what you're doing today? Right? Again, to me, it takes on a new meaning about how we think about. And then the other one I really liked is actually low carbon cement. Now, you're all going to look at me and go, really? 8% of all carbon in the world is produced from cement making. And yet there is technology today that can reduce that footprint by 60 to 100%. Lots of companies are trying it. There's about 7 or 8 companies out there that are trialing all sorts of different ways of doing it through, using renewable energy to heat the kiln, to using different processes to reduce the carbon outset in the first place when you make cement, and around how you store the carbon that you are producing, or even inject it back into the cement. Right? When you think about the size of the real estate market in the world, and that impact that you could have through low carbon cement, I think is one of and again, it's not something we can't do, we are doing it. How do we scale it? There is the opportunity. And lastly, regenerative agriculture. To me, again, when you look at nature-based solutions, there's some amazing stuff going on, really amazing when you really delve into it. Okay, I'm being told to wrap up. Okay, how long have I got? 1 minute or 2? 1, okay, I'll be quick. Okay, I won't spend too much time on it, but regenerative agriculture, look at it, because I think it requires a confluence of things, but actually, to me, it is one of those things when you look at it and go, you've got digitalization, you've got AI, you can make such a difference to farming today, and it sort of puts into question what you think about the way we're spending money on agriculture today. But in conclusion, I think there's just 2 things. The fourth investment, the real difference that this is going to make is this confluence of 3 technologies. There's probably others, but that's the meat of it. And the question you should be asking is, every operation, every renewable energy, anything that's talking about carbon, how are they involving those 3 technologies? How are they getting better? Because those who are will give you better returns, and yet they'll be doing good for the planet. I think the other one is scale. Now, we talked about Europe being quite good at public-private. The problem is institutional money on its own is not going to cut it. And to the previous speaker's point, we need every 23-year-old to be able to invest. Every 23-year-old invests today, we will be changing a lot faster and we will have a lot more money to be able to scale. So I think what you're seeing in Europe, and this is one of the reasons I think that Europe can take such a leadership role, and I'll take France as an example. We have a confluence of 2 things. One is regulation LTIF2. 2 is a law that says every individual in France has to have private assets in their portfolio between 15 and 2%. Now, if you put some of that into impact, and every 23-year-old was able to look on his app and see what he's invested in, right, you will find that there will be much more money coming towards impact than we ever thought possible, because the well is so deep and actually has very little private markets exposure. So in conclusion, I think there's some really interesting, there's lots of interesting, but I've just highlighted 3, but I think 3 or 4, the reason I highlighted is they change the planet and they're scalable. Thank you very much.